Hey, happy Wednesday, RCC fam. It's Pastor T here. So good to be back with you guys for another midweek message. It was really difficult being away from you guys for a week, but I hope that you were encouraged by Sunday's message. You know, it's always so good when we have Pastor Curtis with us, being able to teach us, and when we get to hear him and learn from him, I know our lives are so enriched. His ability to just really bring forth the truth of the scripture to us is such a gift to us. So I hope that you guys were encouraged while I was away, taking a little time for me and the fam, but I really missed you guys. So glad to be back with you. What I'd like to do today for today's midweek message is really kind of wrap up the I Love My Church series, if you will. And as I said that Sunday, 2 Sundays ago now, it's really not an ending, but a beginning. This really should invigorate us, really seeing who the church is and what we should be for and to one another, as well as the world around us. So I really hope that you were encouraged in it, as you know, we spent some time going through that. And the last Sunday that we were together, remember, we talked about giving, and we said right at the beginning, we want to think about giving not as many people think about giving in the church. It's kind of, you know, why are they asking for my money? You know, it's not really giving to the church. And as I said, you know, a great friend of mine told me, he said, when we give, we're really giving through the church, not necessarily to the church, this institution that most people think of when we think of the church, but we're giving through the church. And we looked at that first century church in the book of Acts, and you know, really, that church was an amazing example to us as to what we should all be to and for one another, as well as the community around us, and truly representing the love and light of Jesus Christ in the world. And remember, when we opened the whole series, we talked about something that Jesus said in John's Gospel, the 13th chapter, when he said, hey, I'm going to give you guys a new commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And by this, not the commandment, but the way we loved each other. The commandment was to love, but it would be expressed, or it would be shown, and people would be able to see it, and they would recognize that, hey, what this called out body of people are doing, what this ecclesia is really all about, they would know from that expression of love that we belonged to Jesus. So we looked at this first century church and how they expressed giving. Now again, we're gonna read a passage of scripture, and I'm actually gonna read the passage of scripture that we closed with, because I think it really gives us an opportunity to deeper dive into some things when we think about how do we love our church in a tangible, meaningful way, and then how does that expression of love become a beacon to the world around us, because we are called to be so much more. We are to represent Christ in the earth. So we're going to look at a passage in Acts, and as always, we're going to have a study guide that goes along with today's midweek message for you to do a little deeper dive for yourselves. But we're going to look at Acts chapter 2, and we're going to be in verses 42 through 47, because I think it's really some insight that we want to kind of apply to the lesson that we have been learning. So in chapter 2, verse 42, it says, they were devoted. And that word devoted is really weighty. When you are devoted to something, it really speaks of being all in. So this first century church, they were all in with what the apostles were teaching, and they were all in with one another. So they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. So right away, three things we really see. They were learned, or they were learning, so they were in church. They were listening to what the apostles were giving and teaching. To the fellowship, they were a community. They were together. That word fellowship is about coming together. To the breaking of bread, they ate together. They really lived together. And I know in this post-COVID kind of world, we all long for that, but sometimes it may be a little difficult. But there are ways around it if, we want to think outside the box a little bit. And to prayer. So the people of this first century church, they studied, they were a community, they did life together, and they were people of prayer. And I think those things are really, really important. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and signs were being performed through the apostles. We said in that Sunday service that the atmosphere of radical generosity and unity was the atmosphere for the miraculous to show up and show off. And how many of us would really love for the miraculous to show up and show off in our life? I know I would, right? So signs and wonders were being performed through the apostles. Now all the believers, those who were believing, they were Jesus followers, were together and held all things in common. They shared everything. They were unified. They were called together in purpose. They sold their possessions and property and distributed the proceeds to all as any had need. And a lot of people right now, when they read that or hear that, they go, wait a minute. You're asking me to give everything that I have away and give that to the church? No, that's not what we're saying here. Unless that is what God is calling you to do. So be obedient to God. I'm not calling you to do that. We're looking at this because really the issue speaks to not just what they did, but the heart behind it. Really, generosity, giving, if you will, starts as a heart issue. We played that little clip in church on that Sunday with the seagulls from Finding Nemo, and they were all screaming, mine, 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 mine. That speaks to a heart. This was a tangible, visible representation of the condition of their heart. They loved God, they loved one another, and as they looked around, they desired for no one in the midst to be in need. So they distributed to all as any had need. Every day they devoted themselves to meeting together, so they wanted to be together in the temple and broke bread from house to house. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this, fam. If church is just Sunday, we're missing it. Let me say that again. If church is just a Sunday thing, we're missing it. They were devoted to meeting together in the temple. So they went to a physical location where they heard and learned. And then house to house, they did life every day with one another. They ate their food with joyful and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. See, people around them were looking at this and they said, there is something radically different about how these people are doing life and how everybody else is doing life. And they noticed it, and it garnered favor with those people. And every day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. So when we look at this example of this first century church, I don't believe it's just a historical narrative. I don't believe that it's just something that we're supposed to go, hey, that was cool, that was then, this is now. I believe that this is the blueprint, the model for who we are supposed to be as a church. We are supposed to be people of radical generosity. And remember, that starts in our heart. It's not just, doing something. You can actually give and not be generous. It's about a heart issue. They looked around, and because, like we said, Sawubona, I see you. They saw one another. Their desire was that no one in the congregation had any need. So they said, hey, if I can do anything, I'm going to do something. And that's really the heart of what we're trying to get at. And so this atmosphere of radical generosity and unity invited God in to be on display. And as a result, people outside saw. And they said, hey, I want to participate in what these people are doing. So just a couple things, today, just kind of as a deeper dive. And remember, get the study guide because it's got a lot more questions, some more scripture reference for you, really to explore this idea of generosity and giving. But I want to just kind of ask this as a question, if I could. In your opinion, what prevents churches from making sure that no one among them is needy today? If we think about this idea, if all churches, because remember, when Jesus comes back, he's not coming back for 7 or 8 or 20 or 30,000 different churches. He's coming back for his church, his body. We are a representation. We are his unique expression of his body. But he's coming back for his body, not individual churches. So when I ask the church question, it's a unifying, collective question. In your opinion, what prevents churches, his body, today, from making sure that no one among them is needy? So, if we go from, the big picture and dwindle it down even to our picture, what stands in our way? What do we fail to see, miss, don't care to see, hope we don't see, that maybe keeps us from meeting the needs of the needy people in the body? The idea of I love my church, as we said from the beginning, it starts with love and it ends with love. It starts, we recognize that the church is more than just a place. It's a people. And loving the church means we love the people. And in order to do that, we need to see one another. We need to say, hey, if you're hurting, I want to help. And generosity is not always just finances. This was the unique framework that is expressed here in this passage, but it's more than just that. It doesn't have to be just that. It's a meal for someone. It's like, can we prepare meals for people who are maybe shut in and can't take care of themselves? Do we visit? Do we give of our time? Do we give of our talents? So I don't want us to just think it's about just giving financially, although that is a big part of it. I think a lot of times the difficulty we have with parting with our resources is because it's directly connected to the time that we spent acquiring it. So it's big picture, right? But we want to love our church in a meaningful way. We want this body, the unique expression that is RCC, to be radically generous and unified so that it invites the miraculous presence of God to show up and show off in our midst. And people outside would look in and say, that's something different. I want to participate. So don't forget the study guide. Print that off. A lot more questions where you can go deeper. And I'm going to tell you, it's always cool when you get to do it with one another. I love you guys. It is so good to be back with you. I hope that this kind of reignites your spirit today, really keeps you focused on who we are called to be as representatives of Jesus to and for one another and to the world around us. Hey, I love each and every one of you. I hope you have a blessed rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you all on Sunday in church, because we are the church, right? All right, till we see each other again later.